Hey everybody, welcome back to 30 Ways to Happy Days. I feel like this should actually be renamed 30 Ways to Stronger Days, 30 Ways to Better Days, 30 Ways to Getting Through Your Day. So whatever's going on in your life right now, choose whichever title resonates. For me right now, this is way number 27 of 30 Ways to Better Days. Stronger days, getting through your days. Happy sounds a little naive right now. We'll find better ways for it. But in any case, moving forward with way number 27. So with the last specific way, which I shared, it's been a while now, that was the character strength of kindness. Character strength of kindness, and that was the 24th of the 24 character strengths from the field of positive psychology, which are the well springs, paths, ways to well-being. And as I mentioned in one of the supplementary recordings, shall we say, everything is predicated on certain values. So character strengths by themselves are parav, to use a Jewish phrase, or Hebrew phrase, the idea of neutral, the idea of neither milk nor meat. So character strengths, depending on one's perspective, could be upheld or used or harnessed with people who have very different values from yours. So everything I said, as I believe I mentioned earlier, is within certain, I am presenting this within certain values, including the value of diversity and life and truth. I'll just throw that out there. So what I want to do with the remaining ways towards better days or towards stronger days is talk about some other things, since we've gone through the formula, since we've gone through the different ingredients, if you will, that you can tap into. I just want to bring in some other things that I've thought about, which could also be ways. So here for number 27, I want to talk a little bit about the idea of how you respond to threats or fear. So this is things you probably have already heard of, the fight or flight response, right? There's also freeze, and there's also fawn. So let's break down those four just for a brief moment. So when you feel threatened, and let's talk on the micro level, okay? Let's talk on just your personal, individual level, not anything on a global or macro level. So when you feel threatened or when you feel fear, whether that is a perceived threat or perceived fear, or something that's explicit and verifiable, whether that is a threat to your ego or whether that is a threat to your personal being, a threat to a relationship, something you're afraid of. These are responses that we tend to have kind of instinctively, okay? And what we'd like to do is create a space, a gap between the stimulus and response, right? To borrow from Viktor Frankl, the father of logotherapy, which is we get to choose our response, right? But there are some things that are just instinctive, the way we're perhaps wired, things like that. So let's break it down, because I believe that one of the ways towards a stronger day, moment, hour, is when we become aware. When we're self-aware, we can create that gap, that space to then perhaps choose the response. Even if we have an instinctive response that we can't necessarily control, we can practice creating a space to become self-aware, that kind of outside observer, and then be more mindful in the choice of a response. So fight, flight, okay? Fight, pretty self-explanatory. It could be, if it's with a relationship, an argument. It could be a snapping back. It could be a certain word or response, kind of that gut reaction of being on the offense or being on the defense, okay? But there's that fight element where, you feel like you have to battle. Obviously, if you're in a situation where physically you feel threatened, then that would be something maybe where you are ready to put up your dukes and go at it. Okay. flight is where you want to escape the situation. You want to escape the condition that has arisen. You want to just escape. You want to get out of it. Okay, so that could also be on a relationship level with someone else, a relationship, in your own self-relationship where you don't want to hear or accept or deal with certain realities, maybe certain information that's coming your way that you would then need to kind of digest, process, and figure out what the heck do I do with this. So flight is, goodbye, nothing to see here, I'm out. So again, you can think of that on the micro level with the world. You can think of that on the macro level. You can think of it on the micro level. So what is going on in your life, or what has happened, if you can't think of anything right now, that your initial reaction was fight, maybe verbally or physically. Emotionally, could be like stonewalling. You could argue stonewalling is also flight, but it's a kind of fighting. Okay, you can see where this can be like an interesting exercise just to think about for yourself with your relationships, with what you have going on professionally, personally, family, friends, your community, whatever it is. Like, where do you tend to fight as your gut response or your instinctive response? In what situations do you tend to I'm out of here? Flight, right? Or avoid. Maybe avoidance could be part of that. Okay. That's fight or flight. And then there's freeze. Freeze is that whole what the just happened here. I don't believe what I'm seeing. I don't believe what I'm hearing. I don't believe what I'm experiencing. I just, I'm not registering. So my first, it's probably not my first, but the one that sticks out for me is wow, I totally froze, beyond froze, as opposed to fighting or, fleeing or fawning, which we'll get into, was when years ago when our pup was a baby, a puppy, our dog was a puppy, and we had a training class, and long story short, he was attacked by another dog, and it was I was watching the scene unfold before me, but I was totally frozen. I didn't speak, I didn't yell, I didn't respond, other than freeze. It was really shocking. There was just this element of shock and surprise and I don't believe what I'm seeing. And having no practice, right? No grooves in my brain of how do I respond in this situation? No habits, no, I've prepared for this and so I know what to do, which is to use my voice or call the trainer or what. It was a whole new experience. Maybe you can relate with something going on in your life where you're what the Fraggle Rock is going on? I cannot understand what I'm seeing or hearing, and I'm just frozen because I literally don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. And I'm having a hard time accepting or believing what I'm seeing, reading, hearing, etc. So that's freeze. Literally what it sounds like. You're stuck, you're immobile. There's a lack of active response, shall we say. Okay, so fight, flight, freeze. What situations and what circumstances do you tend to just freeze up? Right? And again, for your individual level, just bring your ego into it, right? We all got egos that we get to work with, manage, have a relationship with, figure out how to deal with. Where is it getting in the way of what you want in your life? Where is it maybe, protecting you or helping you or keeping you? There can be different things there. So again, something that threatened you, something that you were afraid of, that was within what you value, family, friends, work, understanding of life, philosophy, whatever it is, and where have you responded with freezing? And then you can think about what came after. Did you then go into flight mode? Did you then go into fight mode? How did that manifest? Stuff like that. And then the fourth one, which may be newer for some of us, is this idea of fawning, F-A-W-N, fawning, which is kind of don't hurt me, or I'm not coming up with the right words here, but it's basically going out of your way to make someone else comfortable at the expense of yourself, or going out of your way to mitigate a situation in a way that is what's the word? I'm really blanking out here, but basically I'm feeling threatened, I'm feeling in danger, and so I'm going to try and placate you or placate myself or whatever the phrase is, because I should have looked this up before I started the recording, but whatever, where it's this ingratiating almost, okay? And if you have a disagreement with how I'm describing it, I'd love to hear from you. You know, we can have a discussion. That's totally cool. But it's this idea of like, I'm not a threat, don't hurt me. So it could almost be like I'm making myself smaller or invisible before you or before the situation or before the whatever to try and protect myself. Fawning. Okay, so we can think of examples of fawning from different movies, right? Where someone is just kind of like almost playing the game of like, what do I need to do to not be hurt here? Okay, there's a fawning element. Because when you're fighting, you are standing in whatever is true for you in that moment, perhaps, or you're just acting out of an aggressive or a defensive place, verbally, emotionally, physically, but you're taking a stand, right? With fawning, it is, I would say, not necessarily sharing your truth or your authentic self or your authentic position. That's one thought about fawning, okay? But it's different from fleeing, which is like hightailing it out of there, not participating, lurking, let's say, online, right? You see, but you don't speak. That's, it could be an example. It would be just getting out of it. Okay, so freeze and fight and flight and fawn. Okay, so those are 4 ways to respond to perceived or real or whatever. If biologically, physically, we respond in a way that the threat, even if it's not real, but we perceive it as real, we're having that physiological and emotional response to the threat, okay? To the fear that is coming up. And so again, how is this tied to the, how is this the 27th way to stronger days, better days? Because if we take a moment when we're feeling that fear, when we're perceiving that threat, if you can take that moment, obviously, if you're in like a life or death situation, we're not processing anything, we are acting, we are going. But if you're having space to process, you could take a minute and say, okay, what is this fear or this discomfort or this threat that I'm perceiving or I'm feeling? Maybe what are the proof points for it? Okay, and then what is this reaction that I'm feeling? I want to run away. I want to pretend it's not there. I want to placate. I want to say something that maybe will keep me safe. I want to fight. I want to prove my point. I want to go and share XYZ. I'm going to go show up at this, that, and the other thing. So whatever it is, be aware of, like, just try labeling it, right? Name it to claim it. Okay, so am I in freeze mode? Am I in fight mode? Am I in like flight mode? Am I in fawn mode? So fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And then once you know that, you can decide what the heck to do about it. Because again, the whole point on some level is to act in a self-aware manner to the best of your ability, given your situation, given your circumstances, in order to be at your best self going through your life, right? And it's okay to be afraid of something, and it's okay to feel, not okay to feel threatened, but like if you're feeling fear, don't minimize that. Like acknowledge it, and then you are, when you're self-aware that that is what you're feeling, right? If you're self-aware that that is what you're going through, then you can deal with it. But, so part of being stronger, part of using the character strengths that, we've just spent a lot of time on, is also knowing what is the situation you're in right now. What do you tend to do? And depending on the situation, you may be a fighter one time, you may be fleeing a situation another time, you may be fawning at some point, and then you might also be like frozen, okay? So it's not like, oh, this is my this is what I tend to do. You may have a preference, or you may, not a preference, but you may have a way of coping with a threat or fear. But knowing that there are other ways, it just gives a little more discernment to what exactly am I experiencing, how am I reacting, and how can I create space to choose maybe first of all, an acknowledgement of my reaction, and then what do I want to do about it? And that's where you can then go back to the character strengths and say, what character strengths can I use here? Okay, so for example, there's a lot that I am feeling right now as I record this for the first time in a while, and I am choosing to, you could argue fight by creating this video, right? So it's obviously fight with a lowercase f. It is put something out there, taking action, whoever hears it, whatever. Like, I'm going to do this because it's something that I started way back in August that I want to continue and complete and hopefully help others with. So I'm using my strengths of perspective, and I'm using also just like a sense of purpose in finishing this up with these 30 ways. And in order to do that, I've needed to acknowledge my own response to threats and fear. And I have been like totally using, I wouldn't argue flight. I've just been processing a lot, like many of us have, and dealing with it in many different ways. But it was time for me to come back and be more public and share what we can do when we feel whatever is going on in your life, whoever you are, what you can do to have a better day, a stronger day by, and this is way 27, understand your response to, threats and fear. So wishing you a stronger day and a better day, and I will see you on next time.